The cameras were rolling, the studio lights blazing, and every eye in the nation seemed to be fixed on one woman. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat rigidly at the press table, her eyes red from the tears she had been fighting back since the morning. The headline that had swept across every screen was brutal in its simplicity: Ocasio's seat in stunning upset. It wasn't just a political defeat, it was personal, shattering, and humiliating. She had built her brand on fire, passion, and defiance, but tonight, that flame seemed to flicker. And in the quiet pause before she opened her mouth, she whispered words that no one expected: "This is John Kennedy's fault." The room buzzed instantly. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching furiously. She launched into an emotional tirade, blaming Senator John Kennedy for orchestrating what she called a ruthless campaign to undermine her. Her voice cracked with the weight of frustration as she described him as manipulative, cunning, and merciless. "He didn't just take my seat," she declared, trembling. "He stripped away the voice of millions who believed in me." But what Ack did not realize was that Kennedy was already waiting for this moment. Across town, he was preparing for his own press conference, and when asked about her remarks, he leaned into the microphone with that trademark drawl, a calm smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well," he began slowly, "I didn't know losing an election meant collapsing on the floor of a press room. But if that's the standard, then maybe politics isn't where Miss Ocasio-Cortez belongs." The remark cut deep. It went viral within minutes. Clips of Kennedy's response flooded social media, millions praising his wit while mocking her breakdown. The two became the central figures in a national drama: her collapse against his composure, her blame against his sharp rebuttal. Yet beneath the surface, something far more human was unfolding. For Ack, losing her seat meant losing her identity. Since her earliest days, she had carried the pride of rising from a bartender in the Bronx to the halls of Congress. To many, she was proof that anyone could beat the odds. Now, staring at the empty future before her, she felt hollow. Nights were spent pacing in silence, wondering if her entire career had been nothing but a fleeting spark. The anger she aimed at Kennedy wasn't just political, it was the projection of her deepest fear: that she had failed, and he had won. Meanwhile, Kennedy faced his own battle. He had always been underestimated, often dismissed as an old-fashioned Southern politician with the knack for clever one-liners. But behind the humor, he carried scars of his own. Every campaign was a fight not just against opponents but against the perception that he was outdated, irrelevant, or a relic of another era. This victory, though sweet, also brought weight. He knew his words could uplift or destroy, and he had chosen to strike hard. As weeks passed, Ack tried to rebuild her public image, speaking out against Kennedy at every opportunity. Each time she accused him of playing dirty, he calmly responded, often with biting humor that left audiences laughing but her seething. "If Miss Ocasio-Cortez wants a rematch," he once quipped, "she might try winning an argument first." The more he spoke, the more she found herself painted as bitter, and the more regret seeped into her heart. One night, alone in her apartment, she scrolled through endless feeds of people mocking her collapse. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, instead of anger, she felt clarity. She had been so consumed by Kennedy, so obsessed with blaming him, that she had lost sight of her own responsibility. She remembered the people she once inspired: the young girl who wrote to her about chasing her own dreams, the immigrant family who said her voice gave them hope. That, she realized, had nothing to do with Kennedy. That was her mission, and she had abandoned it in her bitterness. The next morning, she appeared on live television again, but this time, her tone was different. Calm, collected, and surprisingly humble, she admitted her mistake. "I blamed Senator Kennedy for my loss," she confessed, "because it was easier than looking in the mirror." But leadership isn't about pointing fingers up, it's about taking responsibility. "And I failed to do that." Her words stunned the nation. Even her critics paused. For the first time since her loss, people weren't laughing, they were listening. When reporters later asked Kennedy what he thought of her apology, he smiled faintly and replied, "Well, I reckon that's the first time she's made me speechless. I respect that." And for the first time in months, the feud seemed to soften. The battle between them had taught two hard truths: that pride can blind us, and humility can restore us. By the end, both Kennedy and Eck walked away with scars, but also with growth. Kennedy proved that sharp wit could topple even the loudest opponents, while Eck discovered that admitting weakness could, paradoxically, make her stronger. And to millions watching across America, their clash wasn't just political theater, it was a reminder that defeat doesn't define us, and that regret can turn into redemption if we're willing to learn. The story closed not with Kennedy's triumph or Eck's collapse, but with a lesson for everyone. In politics, as in life, the true victory doesn't belong to those who never fire up, it belongs to those who rise again, wiser than before.